The whisper wasn't supposed to reach me, or maybe it was. Maybe it was said just soft enough to deny but sharp enough to hurt. James, my husband of 43 years, had only just been lowered into the ground. I was still standing there, frozen in place, when I heard a cold voice behind me say, "Now we're just waiting for the poor widow to go." I didn't turn around. I didn't even flinch. But inside, something shifted, slow and deep, like a crack in frozen ice. I knew that voice. It was Emily, my daughter-in-law. While everyone else was drifting away from the gravesite, I stood still in the mud, watching the grass at my feet. My son Nathan was chatting awkwardly with the pastor, laughing too loud. No one noticed me anymore, not like they used to when James was alive, always beside me, even during his sickness. I'd always been the quiet one, the one who didn't make a fuss. But that whisper, it wrapped itself around my heart like poison. They weren't mourning with me. They were waiting me out. The cold crept into my bones, but what shook me wasn't grief, it was the truth settling in. Emily didn't just want to comfort me. She wanted everything James and I had built, the house, the savings, the life we had pieced together with years of hard work. And I was just the last thing in her way. The poor widow holding it all up. I turned and walked away, my steps steady, my face unreadable. Nathan called something behind me, something meaningless like, "Mom, we'll see you at the house." But I couldn't answer, not without giving away how much I suddenly understood. Back at home, I knew there'd be more fake sympathy, more empty smiles, and Emily pretending to help sort James' things, touching what wasn't hers yet. Nathan would stay quiet, eyes anywhere but on mine. But they didn't know what I'd heard. They didn't know I wasn't pretending anymore. I drove home alone. The car was silent, but not in a peaceful way. It felt full of everything I couldn't ignore anymore. James was gone, and already, I was being pushed aside, like some old piece of furniture they couldn't wait to replace. I pulled into the driveway of the brick house we'd made a home. It looked lonelier now, but it was still mine. Inside, it smelled just the same, lemon polish and old books. I sank into the chair James always sat in. I could almost see him there, coffee cup on the windowsill, reading the paper. He never believed the family would fall apart after he left. He trusted too much in things like legacy and shared blood. But loyalty, love, and kindness, they don't come with a last name. The front door creaked, like it always had. I stepped in and let it close behind me, slow and steady. The quiet in the house was deep, no sound of James' slippers on the floor, no cough from the next room, no soft, "There you are." Just Emily's cruel whisper still echoing in my mind. I walked through the house, touching the life we had built. Every photo, every cushion, every scuffed floorboard, we made it all, piece by piece. We bought this place when Nathan was 2. James worked 2 jobs to pay off the mortgage. I sanded those floors myself while Nathan napped upstairs. And now, they expected me to walk away? Like I was nothing? I picked up a picture from the mantel, James and me, somewhere in our 40s. I was laughing, hand on his chest. We looked so young, so worn out, but glowing with something strong and real. I wiped the glass with my sleeve and set it back gently. Then, the doorbell rang. I didn't jump. I just sighed. It was Nathan. I opened the door, and there he stood, with that same half-smile he always wore when he wanted something. "Hey Mom," he said. "Thought I'd stop by. See how you're holding up." Nathan walked in without waiting for me to say a word. His cologne was strong and expensive, the kind that tried too hard. He gave me a quick hug, cold and stiff like a handshake, and headed straight to the kitchen like he still lived here. He opened the fridge, peeked in, and shut it again. "You haven't eaten?" he asked. I said, "I'm not hungry." He nodded like that somehow meant something and sat down at the kitchen table, looking around the room like he was sizing it up. I sat across from him, doing my best not to stare at how much his face had changed. That soft roundness he had as a boy was long gone. Now his jaw was sharp, his expression harder. He looked more like his father than I cared to admit, except for his eyes. Nathan's were colder. We sat there in silence, and I could feel it, the weight of something unsaid. Then, sure enough, he spoke. "Emily mentioned you might have overheard something at the funeral," he said. "She didn't mean it how it sounded." I tilted my head a little. "Oh? Then how did she mean it?" Nathan shifted in his seat. "Look, we're just trying to help. You're alone now. It's a big house, a lot to take care of. We thought, maybe if you moved in with us, we could handle things here for you." That almost made me laugh. Almost. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Nathan's face, how quickly his concern faded the moment he thought I wasn't looking. And the way he looked at the house, like it was already his. Emily had always watched me too, but never with warmth. She watched me the way someone studies a puzzle, trying to figure out the fastest way to take it apart. I thought back to the first time she hinted at the estate. It was years ago, over dinner, when Harold was still strong enough to dig weeds in the yard without getting winded. We made beef stew that night. Emily didn't eat a bite, said she was gluten-free, though no one asked. While Nathan went on about some new property deal, Emily gave this tight little smile and said, "Have you two thought about getting your affairs in order? It's just safer for the family." Harold nearly choked on his bread. I laughed it off back then, told myself she was just being practical. But now I remembered exactly where her eyes had been, on me, not Harold. I once asked her why she always changed the subject when I mentioned downsizing, maybe moving to a smaller place. She smiled and said, "Oh, you'd never adjust. It's just better if things stay consistent." But for who? I should have paid more attention. I should have asked more questions. But Harold handled the paperwork, and I trusted him. I trusted Nathan. That was my second mistake. Now, the memories started clicking together like puzzle pieces I'd ignored. Emily asking me to sign things during Harold's long hospital stay, just to make sure it's all clear, she said. Nathan waving it off when I asked to look closer. And me, too tired, too sad, too lost to fight about it. It all seemed harmless at the time. Now, it felt like a setup. That afternoon, Margaret came by. My neighbor for over 20 years. The only person who hadn't changed her tone with me since the funeral. She brought lemon bars, Harold's favorite. We sat in the kitchen, the one with the cracked tile Harold always meant to fix. "Heard Nathan's been around," she said gently, more like a soft tap than a real question. I nodded. "He stopped by yesterday." She gave a tight little smile. "And Emily?" I shook my head. "No. But I smelled her perfume on the chair." Margaret didn't laugh. She just waited. I looked down at my hands. "They're circling," I said. "I don't think this is about grief." I found one of Harold's files open. Something didn't feel right. That's when Margaret reached for my hand and said, "Evelyn, I've kept quiet long enough." And then she told me. 3 weeks before Harold passed, she saw Emily out by the fence, pacing with her phone, saying something about needing the old woman to cooperate, or it'll get messy. Margaret hadn't wanted to upset me at the time. Thought maybe she misheard, or it was just stress. But now? She wasn't so sure. My mouth went dry. I sat with that for a long time after she left. That whisper I'd brushed off? It wasn't small anymore. It was screaming. They weren't mourning. They were planning. Planning to push me out before I even had a chance to catch my breath. And maybe, just maybe, they already had something in motion. Because if that will I found yesterday says what I think it does. If Harold's name is on something he never signed, then this isn't just hurtful. It's criminal. But not yet. I wasn't going to shout. I wasn't going to cry or break down. I was going to check everything, line by line. And if they were bold enough to start grabbing for my life before the dirt on Harold's grave had even settled, then I was bold enough to fight for what's mine. That night, I waited until midnight. The house was quiet, still. Then I slipped into Harold's study. I needed the quiet that night. I needed to hear the creak of the drawer in the dark, to feel the cold air wrapped around Harold's things. That drawer had always been his. I knew it'd sound the way you know the click of your own front door, familiar, personal. But last night, when I opened it, something felt wrong. The papers were too neat. Not the usual tidy mess Harold always left. This was too careful. Too planned. And right at the back, like it had been tucked away on purpose, was a folder stamped in red, "Last Will and Testament." My hands trembled a little when I opened it, but not from fear. From a kind of anger I hadn't earned yet, but could feel coming. Inside was one sheet of clean, bright paper. It was newer than everything else. Too smooth. Too perfect. The date stopped me, 7 days before Harold died. But I know exactly where Harold was then, half asleep most of the time, barely talking, hardly eating. We sat in the same living room and watched the sunset. When I gently asked if he wanted to change anything legal, he smiled and said, "It's all squared away, sweetheart. You'll be fine." He never said a word about a new will. So what was this? I kept reading, and each word pulled something out of me. The tone wasn't right. It was cold, robotic, not Harold. Not even his lawyer's usual language. And at the very bottom, a signature. Harold James Hill. But it wasn't his handwriting. I've seen Harold sign his name thousands of times, on birthday cards, checks, even little sticky notes stuck to the fridge. This wasn't his writing. It was a copy. A performance. And right next to it? A witness signature, Emily and Hill. Of course. And the beneficiary? Just one name, Nathan Hill. No mention of me. No shared accounts. No house. No college fund for the grandkids. Nothing. Just Nathan. All of it. I leaned back in Harold's chair with the file on my lap. My breath was so shallow it barely counted. But for the first time since Harold died, I didn't cry. Because grief had nothing on what I felt now. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a setup. A plan. Emily probably typed it. Maybe Nathan stood beside her. Maybe they brought the pen to Harold's hand and held it there. Or maybe they didn't even bother, just copied his name from an old check and hoped I'd never look closely. But they didn't count on one thing. I might be quiet. I might not yell or make scenes. But I remember everything, especially the truth. Harold would never have cut me out. Even when he was slipping near the end, he was clear about protecting me. Don't let them pressure you, he'd said more than once. Everything stays the way we planned. If something happens to me, call Ellen right away. Ellen. Our lawyer. I'd almost forgotten. Or maybe I let myself forget. Because it was easier to believe Nathan still had some decency left. Not anymore. I slid the forged will into an envelope, sealed it, and marked it with Harold's initials, just the way he used to label important mail. Then I tucked it into my coat pocket and called Alan. He didn't pick up, so I left one line, "It's Evelyn. I need to verify something very serious about Harold's will." I didn't sit down. I didn't sleep. I stood watch. I watched the hallway. The front door. Every shifting shadow in the house. Because now I knew exactly what I was dealing with. I wasn't just a grieving widow anymore. I was the one who saw everything. The next morning, Alan answered before the second ring. His voice was sharp, awake. Not surprised to hear from me, just not expecting this. "I found something," I said quietly. "A document Harold supposedly signed. A week before he died. It names Nathan as the only heir. It doesn't sound like Harold. And it's definitely not his handwriting." Alan didn't ask questions. He didn't ask me to explain. He just said, "Come in." The office hadn't changed. Same wooden shelves, same framed photo of his kids on the desk. It had been almost 2 years since Harold and I sat in those chairs together with our coffee cups, going over everything. Back then, Harold had even joked about funeral songs. "You'll play Sinatra and make everyone cry," he'd said with that teasing smile. Alan wasn't smiling today. He opened the envelope, scanned the document, and set it down. Not gently. "This isn't one of mine," he said. "This isn't even close to what Harold signed." I knew it. But hearing it felt like finally exhaling after holding my breath for days. Then Alan pulled out the real files. The originals. Notarized. Properly dated. Everything just as I remembered. The house. The savings. The college fund for the grandkids. Harold's wishes, every last one, intact, protected. Exactly how he wanted it. I told Alan that the will said everything should be split evenly, and that I was supposed to stay in the house for as long as I wanted. He looked at the signatures closely, holding the papers side by side. "Look at this," he said. One signature looked like Harold's usual, steady, with that little flourish on the letter D. The other one? It was shaky, like someone trying too hard, or worse, someone copying. "And you said Emily's name is listed as a witness?" he asked. I nodded. Alan sighed through his nose. "This isn't right. At best, it's a messy attempt at changing the will. At worst, it's straight up fraud." He didn't have to spell it out. I already knew what they'd done, I just needed someone professional to say it out loud. "I needed it confirmed," I said quietly, keeping my voice steady. Alan leaned back in his chair. "Do you want to file a case? Start the legal process?" "No," I said, cutting him off before he could finish. "Not yet." His eyebrows rose. "Why not?" "Because they don't think I know," I told him. "They think I'm just the sad old widow who'll let them walk away with everything. I want them to stay comfortable a little longer, so that when the truth comes out, it stings." Alan gave a slow smile. "All right then. I'll send the will to a handwriting expert. In the meantime, I'll start undoing anything Nathan might be trying to do with that power of attorney Harold signed last winter." "You still have a copy?" "I do," I said. "Locked in the safe. I'll bring it to you today." "Good," he said gently. "And Evelyn? Harold would be proud of you." I didn't answer. Because if Harold were still here, this never would have happened. And if I let myself think too hard about that, I'd cry. So instead, I stood up, thanked Alan, and walked out into the sunshine like I was just out running errands. But inside, something was changing. I had proof. I had a lawyer. I had a plan. And I still had my name on the deed. I invited them over for tea. Nathan sounded hesitant when I called, but polite. "Mom, we were just talking about checking in on you," he said. Emily opened the door before he could even knock, always eager to play hostess when it suited her. She walked in like she was already picking out curtains. The house still smelled like Harold's aftershave. I made sure of that. We sat in the sunroom. I used the good china. The silver spoons were polished. Harold's favorite tea blend was steeping between us. I smiled gently and let them talk first. You've been doing so well, Emily began, her voice full of fake warmth. Naturally, it's time to think about the future. She looked at Nathan, who gave a little nod like a trained dog. With the house and everything, we could help manage things, he added. Take the pressure off you. I stirred my tea slowly. You've been through so much, Emily added, putting on that sugary tone she used when she wanted something. Why worry about all this paperwork? We're family. We'll keep everything safe. That word, safe, hung in the air like a fly buzzing too close to your face. I smiled. That's very kind of you. For a split second, Emily's eyes lit up. She thought I was giving in. They always think we'll fold, the quiet ones. The older ones. I set my teacup down gently. I actually found some old files Harold had tucked away, I said, casually. Funny what you come across when you're cleaning. Nathan blinked. Emily's grip tightened on her teacup. Oh? Nathan tried to sound relaxed. Yes, I said, looking right at them. His will. The one you both probably thought I'd lost. Emily's fake smile slipped just a little. Oh, that one, she said lightly. But you know, he might have updated it later on. I tilted my head. Did he? Nathan cleared his throat. Well, we talked a lot while you were at the hospital. He wanted to make things simpler. Emily jumped in, her voice all soft and sweet again. You know how messy probate can be, Evelyn. Harold just wanted to save you the stress. I leaned forward just a little, lowering my voice, not sharp, just steady. Well, I'll let my lawyer figure out what's valid and what's not. Lucky for us, Harold always kept records. And I've got every single version. That was it. The flicker. Emily's face lost a bit of color. Nathan glanced at her, there was panic behind his eyes. I picked up my teacup again and smiled. Of course, dear. We all just want what's best for the family. Nathan let out a nervous little laugh. Exactly, Emily echoed, her voice not quite as confident this time. Emily tried to recover quickly. Actually, she said with a bright little smile, why don't we all sit down with your attorney sometime? Just to make sure everything's clear and fair. I set my teacup down a little harder than necessary, just enough to let it clink. I'm sure we will, Emily. In due time. Nathan shifted uncomfortably in his chair. I let the silence stretch, a little too long for comfort. Then I stood up and gave his shoulder a soft pat. Well, I said kindly, I've got errands to run. But thank you both for coming. You've really helped clear things up for me. As they walked to the door, Emily's smile had stiffened, too tight, too forced. Nathan didn't even look at me. When the door closed behind them, I locked it. For the first time, I didn't feel like the grieving widow. I felt like someone preparing for battle. Let them think I was still lost in sorrow. Good. That would make the next part even sweeter. 2 days later, I was back in Alan's office. This time, I wasn't empty-handed. The papers I brought felt heavier than they should have, like they were carrying everything I'd been through. The trust is ready, Alan said gently. Everything's secure now. Nathan and Emily can't touch a thing without your say-so. And if anything happens to you, your trustee takes over. I nodded. I'd chosen Margaret. She hadn't hesitated when I asked. She didn't even blink when I told her why. They're going to fight you, she had said softly. Are you ready for that? I hadn't answered then, not because I was unsure, but because I was more ready than I'd ever been. They've already started, I told her instead. Now, sitting with Alan, it all felt real. Every page we signed wasn't just paperwork, it was protection. It was me reclaiming my power. Alan tapped one of the documents. We've officially revoked Nathan's power of attorney. He no longer has any legal right to act on your behalf. The bank, the brokerage, your insurance, everyone's been notified. It was done. Really done. For years, I had clung to the hope that Nathan loved me more than he loved what I had. Now I saw how wrong I was. He and Emily didn't care about me. They cared about the money. The house. The control. Alan slid the final paper toward me. This is the updated version of your will. No gaps, no room for challenges. Even after you're gone, they won't be able to change a thing. I took my time signing it. My name, in slow, careful strokes, sealed in blue ink, like a quiet promise. They'd never get their hands on what wasn't theirs. Alan handed me a copy in a fireproof envelope. Keep this one safe at home. The original stays with me. And if they try anything before then, you call me. I tucked the envelope into my bag. Outside, the afternoon sun was hot and sharp. But I didn't shy away from it. For the first time in weeks, I stood straight, not bent under grief, not frozen by fear. I was strong. I was ready. As I pulled into the driveway, my phone buzzed. Nathan. For a second, I thought about ignoring it. But no, let him speak. "Hi, Mom," he said, trying too hard to sound casual. "Emily and I were thinking, maybe dinner this weekend? Just to check in. Keep things smooth." I let a pause hang in the air, just long enough to sting. "That's thoughtful, Nathan," I said sweetly. "But no need. Everything's very smooth on my end." Another pause. This one was tight. "Well, if you change your mind, we just want to make sure you're okay." I smiled, letting the silence linger. "Oh, I'm more than okay, dear. But thank you." Click. I set the phone down carefully. I could feel it in his voice, they knew. They could sense the shift. The fear was there, dressed up as concern. I was no longer their fragile mom. No longer their target. No longer their fool. Emily was probably behind the call, whispering suggestions into Nathan's ear. Keep her close. Keep her feeling small. Keep her manageable. But they were too late. The house was no longer their future. The money was no longer their plan. And I was no longer their stepping stone. I stood in Harold's study, looking out at the garden he used to tend. I could almost see him out there, trimming the hedges, smiling. He would have been proud. Quiet doesn't mean weak. I should have known that from the start. When the knock came that Friday morning, I already had a feeling something was off. It wasn't Nathan's knock, it was too sharp, too sure. I opened the door to find Emily, dressed perfectly as always. Not a hair out of place. Lipstick flawless. But she wasn't alone. Behind her stood a tall man in a crisp suit, holding a clipboard. And a woman trailing behind with a branded tote bag. A real estate agent. Of course. "Good morning, Evelyn," Emily said, stepping inside without waiting for me to invite her. "Hope I'm not catching you at a bad time." I stayed in the doorway. "It's early, Emily." "Oh, it's never too early for good news," she chirped, beaming. "This is Mark and Jenna, they're just here for a quick walkthrough." "Walkthrough?" I asked, keeping my voice calm. It had begun. "The house, of course," Emily said brightly, dropping her voice like we were sharing a secret. "Nathan told me you were open to starting the process. We just want to get a sense of the market value. It's all very early, just a preliminary look." Her eyes sparkled like she thought she'd already won. But Nathan hadn't called me. Nathan hadn't said a word. And I knew why, because he didn't dare. I looked slowly at the real estate agent and the man holding the clipboard. Both of them started to shift uncomfortably under my stare. Their professional smiles didn't hold up well under pressure. "Forgive me," I said, calm and polite as ever, "but I don't remember giving permission for an appraisal. Or a walkthrough." Emily's voice got sticky sweet, the kind of syrup that makes your teeth ache. "Oh, come on, Evelyn. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." Nathan explained everything. "We're just trying to make this transition smooth for you." There it was again, transition. Like I was luggage, being gently wheeled out of the way. "I see," I said, folding my hands calmly. "And what transition would that be?" She blinked, clearly caught off guard by the question. Then she waved vaguely toward the walls of my house, like they were weighing me down. "Well, we all know this house is too much for you now. It must be exhausting to manage alone," she said, her voice dancing between pity and quiet insult. "Harold wanted us to make sure you were taken care of," she added, like speaking his name gave her permission to rewrite his wishes. I looked right at her. "No," I said flatly. Emily blinked again. "I'm sorry?" "No," I repeated. "No appraisal. No walkthrough. And absolutely no sale." I turned to the agent. "If you came here based on assumptions, and not with something I personally signed, I suggest you leave. Now." The agent looked nervously at Emily, then started backing toward the door. The clipboard man followed, muttering something about a misunderstanding. Now it was just Emily standing there in my foyer, clutching her handbag like it was the only thing holding her together. Her smile twitched one more time, trying to stay on her face. "I was only trying to help," she said. "No," I corrected. Gently, "you were trying to help yourself. But don't worry, I've taken care of it. Legally." For a second, I thought she might snap. But instead, she swallowed whatever harsh words were forming and walked out in silence. I closed the door behind her. Locked it. Then stood there, quiet, steady. They were getting sloppy. That was good. Desperate people make mistakes. And I had all the time in the world. The next morning, just before breakfast, the phone rang. It was Nathan. I let it buzz twice before picking up, already calm. His voice was tight. "Mom, what happened yesterday?" Emily came home really upset. "She brought a realtor into my home without asking," I said simply. "That tends to upset people. Though not quite as much as learning your own son might have. Signed off on it behind your back." "No, Mom, that's not what happened." She misunderstood. "I didn't tell her to schedule anything, yet." I closed my eyes. The lies came too easily for him now. Did you sign something, Nathan? I asked, my voice sharp but quiet. Did you give Emily a reason to think she had that kind of authority? Silence. I almost pitied him. Nathan, I said, I've revoked the power of attorney. It's done. Everything now goes through my lawyer, my estate, the house, everything. Mom, don't do this, he snapped. We're family. Exactly, I said. And family doesn't sneak realtors into their mother's house a month after the funeral. I could hear Emily in the background, whispering, agitated. Probably feeding him lines, tugging on his words like strings on a puppet. We just want to make sure everything is handled fairly, Nathan tried again. But there was a nervous edge now. The crack was showing. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. This isn't about fairness, I said. It's about what you thought you could take. But not anymore. He let out a heavy breath, frustrated. You're blowing this out of proportion. I almost laughed. Nathan, I began. He forged the will. I watched his reaction, a sharp breath, like the truth had knocked the wind out of him. I let the silence hang there for a moment before speaking again. Mom, he said, his voice suddenly small, almost a whisper. What are you talking about? You know exactly what I mean, I told him calmly. I have the real will. Harold's actual will, notarized and legal. And I also have the fake one. The one Emily helped create. He tried to interrupt. But I didn't let him. It's already been verified by professionals. My lawyer has started the legal process. If you want to challenge it, go ahead, but you'll be up against expert witnesses, signed affidavits, and a handwriting analysis. He went quiet again. I could feel the silence pressing down on him like a heavy coat. You made your choice, Nathan, I said gently, but firmly. You let her pull you into this. In the background, I could hear Emily shouting, and Nathan trying to calm her down. I pictured the two of them panicking now that their little plan was falling apart. When he finally spoke again, his voice was soft. We didn't want things to get messy. I smiled, he couldn't see it, but I smiled anyway. Oh, Nathan, I said quietly. It already is. You just thought I'd be too heartbroken to notice. He didn't answer. A second later, the line went dead. He hung up. I stood there holding the phone, listening to the empty hum. For years, I had made excuses for Nathan, called his selfishness growing pains, or blamed it on Emily's influence. But now, I saw it clearly. He wasn't tricked. He chose this. He chose greed over love. And for the first time in a long time, I chose myself. I set the phone down and walked to my study. On my desk was the sealed folder from Alan, my attorney. Everything was ready. They could scramble all they wanted, they were already behind. The first official call came early Monday morning. The world was still quiet, and Alan's voice was calm. The private foundation is officially registered, Evelyn, he said. We're ready to begin the asset transfers whenever you are. I closed my eyes for a moment. Everything Harold and I had built, the house, the savings, the investments, was finally safe. No one could take it. Not Nathan. Not Emily. Not anyone who thought my grief made me weak. I imagined Harold sitting across from me, watching it all. They thought they could break you, I whispered into the still room. But they forgot who raised them. Later that day, I met Alan. Not at his office, too public. We sat in a quiet bank conference room instead. Miss Carlson, the account manager, spread out the documents on the table between us. Everything was neat and official. She read the name out loud, the Evelyn and Harold Hill Family Foundation. It was independent, irreversible, and completely under my control, with trusted people in place to oversee it. At the top of the trustee list was Margaret's name. Nathan's name? Gone. Off the deed. Off the bank accounts. Off the insurance policies. Everything he once assumed would be his, just quietly expected, was now out of his reach. The house no longer belonged to me alone. It belonged to something stronger, something protected. And I was still at the wheel. It's done, Alan said, slipping the final papers into my folder. They can't touch a penny. I didn't feel triumphant, just clear. This wasn't revenge. It wasn't about getting even. This was about protecting what mattered. Quiet, final, and complete. Alan looked at me. Do you want me to notify them? They'll find out when they try to act, I said. Let them figure it out on their own. He smiled. That's going to be an interesting day. Oh, I knew it would be. When I got home, everything felt different. The walls, the air, nothing had changed physically, but it felt like mine again. Truly mine. Not held together by fear or obligation. As I made myself a cup of tea, my phone buzzed. A message from Nathan. Mom, can we please stop this? It's gone too far. Let's just meet. Please. The desperation in his words was clear. I stared at the screen, thinking of the boy he used to be, the one who brought me sunflowers on Mother's Day, who curled up next to me during storms, who I shielded from so many of life's harsh corners. But that boy wasn't texting me. Now, he was only reaching out because the money was slipping away, not my love, not my protection, just the comfort he thought he was owed. And that made all the difference. Forgiveness? No, Nathan didn't want that, he just wanted the money. I didn't bother replying. Instead, I went to Harold's old study, opened the fireproof safe, and placed the final copies of the foundation papers inside. Right next to them sat the journal, not full of paper, but full of truth. And it was getting heavier by the day. 2 weeks later, a "for sale" sign went up outside the house, but not the kind Emily had been hoping for. This wasn't a quiet deal behind closed doors. This wasn't some simple solution they tried to pressure me into. No, this was the end. My choice. My terms. The house wasn't going to sit there like bait, waiting for me to grow tired or too old to fight. It was going to be sold, and every dollar would go straight into the foundation, safe forever. Alan had found the buyer. A historical preservation group. They saw the house not just as real estate, but as a piece of history. They wanted to protect it, restore it, honor the memories within its walls. Most importantly, they would never let Nathan and Emily get their hands on it. That morning, I signed the papers. The ink had barely dried when Alan leaned back in his chair and let out a long breath. That's it, Evelyn. Every loophole closed. I didn't smile exactly, but I felt something inside me finally let go. We stood on the front porch together when the buyer's team arrived to start their inspection. They greeted us with kindness, a breath of fresh air after weeks of lies and manipulation. Alan turned to me and asked, "Are you sure you don't want to be here when they find out?" I shook my head. "They'll find out soon enough," I said. "Let them learn when it's too late to stop it." That afternoon, Margaret picked me up. My bags were already packed. I wasn't going to stick around to watch the drama unfold. That part of my life was done. I'd arranged a quiet little place by the sea, far enough away that Nathan wouldn't come pounding on my door, but close enough that I could breathe the same salty air Harold once dreamed we'd retire to. As we drove off, I glanced back at the house one last time. Not with sadness, with clarity. That house had held so many versions of me, the young bride, the new mother, the grieving widow, the woman who kept making excuses for everyone else. But now, I was someone new. Someone who belonged only to herself. Margaret glanced over. "You okay?" I nodded. Better than okay. Less than 24 hours later, as we were unpacking my new kitchen, Margaret's phone buzzed. She handed it to me with raised eyebrows. It was Nathan. I answered. "Mom, what the hell is going on?" he said. "Emily says the house is listed, that it's already sold." His voice cracked. He was panicking now. "Yes, Nathan," I said calmly. "It's been sold. It's no longer any of your concern. You can't just—" "Oh, but I can." He fumbled, his voice rising. "This isn't fair. After everything, after Dad, after everything, you're just cutting us out?" I let him go on, let him hear how much he'd lost. Then I said, "I'm not cutting you out, Nathan. You did that yourself, the day you forged your father's name." The silence on the other end was heavy. He finally muttered, "You're destroying this family." "No," I said softly. "I'm protecting myself from one." It didn't take long after that. Just 3 days after the sale went through, Alan called again. His voice was calm, but there was a trace of dry humor there. "They filed a complaint." I didn't flinch. I'd been expecting it. "What for?" I asked. "Mental incompetence," he replied. "Of course. When greed doesn't work, they go for pity. Or control." I could almost see Emily whispering in Nathan's ear, feeding him the lines, "She's grieving, she's not thinking clearly, she's being manipulated. They're trying to convince the court you weren't in your right mind when you made the transfers," Alan added. "It's desperate. And sloppy." He clicked his pen quietly in the background. "You think that'll work?" I asked, more curious than angry. "It won't," he said. "Not with what we've prepared." Because this time, I hadn't been caught off guard. I had everything ready, medical evaluations from my doctor proving I was clear-headed, recent and detailed. Signed statements. From professionals, financial advisors. Even Margaret had documented every step I'd taken, months before Nathan ever picked up the phone in panic. We had texts, messages from Emily that read like thinly veiled threats. Audio recordings of conversations where she pushed Nathan to act. And the handwriting expert who confirmed the will was forged. No, I hadn't built this defense overnight. I'd built it slowly, carefully, while they assumed I was still grieving, still too fragile to fight. Alan continued, "We'll file the countersuit immediately, for estate coercion and emotional harassment. That should shut this down." And this time, I didn't feel fear. I felt ready. Any kind of guardianship nonsense? I let out a slow breath. It wasn't victory I felt, just a quiet sense of peace. Not because they'd lost, but because I wasn't sitting there like prey anymore, waiting for someone to come and tear pieces off me. They don't have a case, I said. Alan agreed. They know that. But they're scrambling. Desperate people always think there's still one more way in. I nodded. Good. Let them keep throwing money into the wind. For 2 full weeks, I heard nothing. And for a moment, I let myself think maybe, just maybe, they'd finally backed off. But I've lived long enough to know silence is rarely harmless. So when Alan called again, I already had a feeling. They filed a new motion, he said, his voice steady. This time, Emily signed it herself. I closed my eyes. What is it? Petition for guardianship, he said. There it was, the last card in their hand. If they couldn't take my money, they'd try to take me. Emily's plan was simple: paint me as a lonely, confused old woman, being manipulated behind the scenes. Say I wasn't thinking clearly. Say I needed help, their kind of help. The kind that came with control. Nathan had stepped aside officially, letting Emily lead the charge. She must have convinced him she'd be better at it, that she had a shot at winning. Alan went on. Their affidavit says you're isolated and unstable. Claims Margaret's influencing your decisions. Says the foundation was created under pressure. Classic emotional spin. But I didn't feel angry. I felt cold, steady. Calm. This is their endgame, I said. Alan gave a dry little laugh. And their last mistake. Because what Emily didn't know was just how carefully we had prepared for this. Quietly. Patiently. Step by legal step, we'd built a wall they couldn't climb. Alan's voice warmed a bit as he listed it all: updated medical records, independent psychological evaluations, video interviews with my financial advisors, all notarized, all official. And most important of all, my video affidavit. I could still picture that day in Alan's office. The camera pointed at me, my voice clear and strong. My name is Evelyn Hill, I said. Everything I have done is my choice, fully informed, sound of mind. If my son or daughter-in-law ever question my mental capacity, let this recording be my response. No fear. No hesitation. Alan had smiled when we finished filming. They're going to hate this. And he was right. We filed the full response. It wasn't emotional. It wasn't defensive. It was solid, every piece fitting into place. 3 days later, the court threw out their petition. No hearing. No back and forth. No courtroom drama. Just one clean decision: denied. Alan slid the official dismissal papers across the table to me. They don't get to walk away clean, he said. You've been more than patient. This isn't just about what they tried to do. It's about what they did. He handed me the next page. A lawsuit, $100,000 in damages for emotional harassment, forgery, and attempted estate manipulation. I stared at the number. Are you sure? Alan's voice was calm. Absolutely. We have everything: the audio recordings, the forged documents, expert reports. They left a trail so wide, even a blind judge wouldn't miss it. I gave one quiet, final nod. File it. The court moved fast. By then, they were done giving Nathan and Emily the benefit of the doubt. No one was willing to entertain their excuses anymore. Their names were already a stain on the case record. The summons hit them hard. Margaret saw Emily a few days later at the local market. She came back with raised eyebrows and a slight smile. She looked pale, she said. Didn't even try to make small talk. I nearly laughed. Almost. Because while they were out there playing games, lying, scheming, I had built something solid. A wall they couldn't get past. Their lawyer sent a quiet email to Alan not long after. He was trying to settle behind the scenes. My clients acknowledge their mistakes, he wrote. We'd like to negotiate a reduced amount. Alan just smiled when he forwarded it to me. They're broke, he said. They assumed they'd inherit everything: the house, the savings. They spent money they didn't have. I sipped my tea. One word, I said. No reductions. No forgiveness. They fought so hard for money that was never theirs to begin with. Let them feel the cost. The court date came fast. Their lawyer barely had anything left to say. The judge's ruling was clear, sharp, and final. Nathan and Emily owed me $100,000. Of course, they didn't have it. 2 weeks later, Margaret brought the notice over, holding it like a final chapter. They filed for bankruptcy this morning, she said, her voice soft but satisfied. She handed me the envelope and said, Chapter 7. That was it, they were officially bankrupt. I sat on my little porch that overlooked the ocean, reading the papers slowly. I didn't feel happy, not exactly. But I did feel something close To peace. Their credit was ruined, their reputation gone. The future they once planned, so sure I'd stay silent, had crumbled. They were left with exactly what they feared most, nothing. Alan called me later that day. "It's done, Evelyn," he said. "They'll carry this bankruptcy for the next 10 years. It's public. They can't erase it." "Good," I replied quietly. "They can't touch you again," he added. "They never really could," I said, softly. There was a pause. Then, he said something I didn't expect. "I've handled a lot of cases like this, Evelyn. But very few end with this much grace. You didn't fight back. You just built a wall and let them run into it." "That's because they never heard me coming," I told him. "I didn't yell. I didn't beg. I just waited. And now it was over. They were done, and I was finally free." That morning, the ocean was calm. But not the kind of calm that feels empty, the kind that feels earned. Like even the sea had finally let something go. The bankruptcy was settled. The lawsuits were closed. My name was protected. My life, steady. Margaret once asked me, "Do you regret not speaking to him again?" I thought about it for a while. About the texts, the calls, the long voicemails. That came after the case ended, each one more desperate than the last. I never answered. "No," I finally said. "He knows where I am. He knows the door's closed. If one day he knocks for something real, not for money or pity, then we'll see." Margaret gave me a small, understanding smile. "But you don't hate him," she said. "No," I whispered. "I don't. Hate is heavy, and I've carried enough in this life. I love the boy he used to be," I continued. "But the man? The man made his choices. And now, I've made mine."